We're doing. Okay.
I think that in 1 second here, we are going to be live in a living. All right, Mikey. No way to start a show yawning. Now, come on.
Here we go.
What are you watching the Cougar game or what?
As a matter of fact, I'm weeping.
Hey, it's Mikey and Vinnie. Final time in 2021.
Oh.
He is Michael Knight, and
I'm so sad.
Los Angeles. Come on.
I wanted to be so well prepared for the last show of 2021, but it turns out I cooked it.
Well, you know, preparation is overrated.
Preparation is the mother of a Megillah.
Yeah. Preparation for me has always been overrated. Maybe
yes, I know. I remember when you used to prepare by listening to the headlines in the shower. I thought, why didn't I think of that?
This was before, you know, ESPN and but before Bluetooth speakers and everything like that.
Oh yeah.
But I used to hit I had a speaker, plugged speakers into the back of my television. I could move ESPN into my shower and had it right outside the shower door. And I'm sitting there listening to ESPN.
And becoming clean and white and perfectly pink and well washed.
Yeah, Bob Lee and I forget the other guy that was with them, man. They saw me with no clothes on more than anybody else.
Biff Jiggerman. Bob Lee and Biff Jiggerman.
I think it was Bob Lee and Biff Jiggerman. Was it George Grandy?
Oh God, I have no idea.
Was he the other guy with Biff Jiggerman? With Bob Lee.
He didn't mean that. He didn't mean that, Biff. He didn't mean any of it.
Sorry, Biff. You're a man of all purposes. You've become the third wheel on this show, Biff.
You know where he is today, don't you?
No, where is Biff Jiggerman?
Where he always is, Kansas City.
Oh, it's a very nice place.
It's got to be some kind of a game in Kansas City.
Some kind of a game, but we don't know.
Yeah. After all these years, Ben, you know, we still don't know exactly what kind he was talking about.
No, I don't think anybody knows what kind of a game anybody's talking about when they say some kind of a game. I mean, really, Michael, I mean, it's such one of those, it may be one of the most overused, I guess the most overused is you got to play you have to play up to your ability.
I think the most overused is done by Troy Aikman 17 times during every game. There's a running play. He says, well, we talked about the running plays. There was a running play. They gave him the ball and he ran it. There's a passing play. Well, we talked about their passing plays. That was a passing play. You can tell by the way he threw the ball. We talked about it. If I wired electrodes to his nuts and said, you can't say we talked about, Troy Aikman could not do the broadcast.
Well, you know, Mikey, it's interesting because the great man who passed this week, John Madden, we talked about him on the show on Wednesday.
I wire your nuts to the phrase we talked about.
Yeah. We alluded to him on Wednesday.
There you go.
I know that one was.
We referred to him
every time I hear the word alluded, and you know, it's so common now, such a common way instead of we talked about it or we referenced as we alluded.
And you know who started it?
Who started it?
Howard Cosell was the first man to say alluded on sports television.
If he were alive, I'd send him a letter today.
I shall send you this letter, my friend.
Something tells me that Howard Cosell wouldn't have email, wouldn't have computers or anything, man. He would be old school.
Howard Cosell, speaking of sports.
Muhammad Ali.
What a crazy delivery. Did anyone ever say, you know, Howard, we're looking for a more fluid delivery. You, my friend, are no longer vice president.
Get me Roone Arledge on the phone. But getting back to Madden for a second, you know, he was such the master of the obvious.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I mean, there were people who would imitate him and he would, in so many ways, you know, you could have taken him to task. The people that know football would get mad at him because they would say, well, you're always talking about things that we all know. And what they never realized is what I know I learned when I got into this business, that everybody doesn't watch as much sports as we do. True. The women do not watch. Now they probably do, but in days gone by, when Madden was coming into his own in the 70s and the 80s, women didn't watch sports as much. You might have had a wife that was sitting there with their husband for the first time watching a game. And here's Madden explaining it. That was the beauty of John Madden that nobody talked about. He was definitely the master of the obvious.
I thought of him yesterday also when they announced the winners or the nominees for the Biletnikoff Award. You have an award for wide receivers in college, and who's it named after? Fred Biletnikoff, of all people. He weighed 150 pounds soaking wet. He could get by anybody, and he could catch anything, and he could run for the roses. He was an extraordinary Raider, and boy, could they use him now.
Well, I could come up with a list of 10 players they could use right now,
including Phil Villapiano. I just like saying that name.
Where is Phil Villapiano right now?
Where's Ted Hendricks, for that matter, the Mad Stork?
Where's Emerson Boozer? I mean, that is a name. That was a great name, Emerson Boozer. Where's
the guy from the University of Mars, Otis Sistrunk?
Oh, I love that, man. I love that one. Where's the snake?
Oh, you mean Kinney?
Kinney. Where's the snake? Show me the snake, baby.
Remember once we were making up stories. I said that Dave McQueen was back from his vacation. I said that he'd been up water skiing with Kenny Stabler on the Sacramento River. And McQueen loved that. And he said, now don't tell stories.
Yeah, Dave McQueen, we lost him this year.
Yep, we did.
Yeah, we did. One of the sad, among many sad notes of this year. One of the biggest ones was for us personally is that we lost Dave McQueen. He was a heck of a news guy and
a presence.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about a guy that made his presence known through a microphone.
Yep.
I mean, I wish, somewhere I actually have a tape of one of his newscasts back in Pittsburgh in my storage locker back there, which I'm hoping to get out here, soon. And just to listen to that voice and the diction and the perfect. I mean, it was just perfect. And I mean, you stopped what you were doing when you heard his voice.
Yes.
He really was the voice of God. I mean, God gave that guy an instrument, man, and he knew how to use it.
He told me once that he would prepare for his KSAN newscast by going down into the basement, sitting on the stairs, smoking a joint, and then just going in and winging it. He had the notes in front of him, of course.
Yeah.
But in keeping with his audience, he was in the same frame of mind as they were.
Yeah, because most of the people that were listening to him were probably, if you were listening to KSAN in the 70s, chances are you were doing drugs.
Which is apparently what the Cougs were doing this morning as they took the field against the Central Michigan Chippewas.
The poor Cougars, man. I mean, they can't buy a completion. It looks like when you look at El Paso and it's called a Sun Bowl.
No sun.
It's raining and they got gloves on. That kind of tells you something, man.
They're wearing the same parkas that they should have been wearing if they were playing in Martin Stadium.
Well, I was just going to say that to me, that's no excuse for the Cougs.
None whatsoever. They're a cold weather team.
I mean, now so is Central Michigan. I mean, I can only imagine I don't even know where their campus is.
Well, is there really a central part to Michigan? I mean, there's the Upper Peninsula, the north, the south.
Yeah, it's like right here.
Oh, there.
It looks like a hand. You got the piece that comes out there and the other piece up there. And I think it's probably. I mean, we should probably figure out where it is, but I can't imagine that in the winter.
You've been everywhere. Have you been to Central Michigan?
Oh yeah. I don't know if I've been as far up as Central Michigan is, but I'll tell you in a minute. I have not been to the one place that I really want to go, and I've been promising myself to go there for the longest time.
Palm Springs?
And that is Mackinac Island.
Ah.
Which is just supposed to be absolute Mount Pleasant, Michigan.
No, there's no mountains in Michigan.
No,
it's as flat as the Ice Age left it.
So if I'm looking at, let's see, you got Chippewa Waters Park here in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Olive Garden, Comfort Inn, Courtyard.
Olive Garden, but do they have a Stuckey's?
No, Great Wall, Panda Express, Rallies.
Panda Express, okay, we won't starve.
Cottage Inn Pizza, Hunter's Ale House, The Cabin.
Uh-oh, The Cabin, that's like the Coug for Central Michigan.
Yeah, something tells me that that's exactly what you got there. And I don't know, I'm just trying to see now, relative to the state, where are we?
We're over there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It is, I mean, they're not lying when they say Central Michigan. I mean, it is flat in the middle of the state. It's northeast of Saginaw. And I've been to Saginaw. There's
a great poetry in that name.
Oh, Saginaw, yeah.
Yeah.
And a great transmission, too.
And Ypsilanti, don't forget.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Michigan has some great town in Muskegon and Kalamazoo.
Oh, Kalamazoo, the home of Gibson guitar.
And Battle Creek, the home of
cereals of some sort.
Kellogg's.
Kellogg's.
Tony the Tiger.
Oh, Tony the Tiger Alamo Bowl were rained and there was no cereal to be had. That's what happened to the Cougs. They didn't eat their cereal this morning.
Yeah, something must have happened. Well, maybe they ate the Tony the Tiger stuff, but it was, yeah, I haven't been up that far. But boy, oh boy, I would love to. I've been meaning to and going because it's right on I-75, which is splits the state in two.
Well, they got some kids there on the Chippewa team that want to play football today.
Oh yeah, no, they showed up. A Chippewa, listen, and I mean, yeah, I know there will be all kinds of excuses like, oh, this happened and that happened, but who knows? Maybe they'll pull it together in the second half.
I can't help but notice behind you the empty drum set.
Yes. Along with Charlie Watts,
which was posted on Keith Richards' site when Charlie Watts died at the age of 80 this year.
Yeah, we lost a lot of. We were talking about losing people before. We lost a lot of people this year, Mike. A lot of musicians. Just a lot of, it's been a continued year of loss.
I didn't make a list of the actors, but I know that the one that sticks in my mind is Christopher Plummer.
Yeah.
Because he had such a long, successful career.
Yeah. It's, I mean, we're at that stage of life, though, where all of these people that we grew up listening to or watching are now old enough to check out.
And a lot of the musicians whose work we bought in the 60s and 70s are doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The people that we enjoyed as young people, people that gave us hope, people that gave us some kind of feeling of cohesiveness and togetherness in the 60s, when we when we were in similar times to what we are now.
I think we're in more desperate straits now.
Well, yeah, I think that, you have social media, and that certainly makes the situation much different. And I think you're right. I think it does make the times worse because, I was around in a lot of those rallies and protests in the 60s and the 70s. And I never heard anybody say that they thought that that it threatened our democracy.
Well, no. I mean, if we had Republican friends who were pro-war, now we have Republican relations and friends that are pro-destruction of time and space, who are here to absolutely destroy in every way conceivable the structure of the nation, the structure of society, and if they can, they'll get rid of gravity and time.
Well, it's interesting also, too, to me, that it's not just here. It's happening around the world.
That's our influence.
I mean, go look at Poland. I read an article yesterday, it was in the New York Times, that a friend sent me about Poland. And they're going through the same thing. They don't call it, they call it sovereignty.
Yes, always. Poland for Polish. Poland for the Polish.
Yeah, it's sovereignty. It's, and what shocks me is that here we don't know what it's like to live under an authoritarian regime. None of us in this country that were born here know what that's like.
Well, you might argue that the black population of America knows what it's like.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that argument. But for the most part, even black people in this country are still free to get up and move wherever they want. Now, their civil rights may not be the same if they move to the southern part of the country as they might be in the northern part of the country or out west, which is why you saw so many people settle in Oakland so early, so many black people, because it was somewhat less oppressive. I'm not going to say there was no oppression going on there.
And it was more welcoming after the great African-American populations moved to the Bay Area during World War II to work in the shipyards.
Right, because people said, hey, you can go out there and make money. And it's not as you don't have to worry about somebody attacking you on the way home from work just because you're black. I'm not saying that didn't happen out there, but it happened to a lesser degree than it did if you were in Alabama. So getting back to my premise that we don't know what it's like to live under it. The people in Poland know what it's like. I mean, they had an authoritarian dictatorship there and had the Russians in, 25 years ago until 1989.
And they had the Russians because before that they had the Nazis, if you remember the Warsaw Ghetto.
Right, and before that they had the Russians again.
And before that they had a royal family that couldn't write their name.
They were only a free country for maybe 20 years in the early part of the 20th century.
Yeah.
And then since 1989.
Let's revert to what we know best.
And so it's shocking to me, and really an interesting study to me, to think that there are people that would want to go back to that. That there are people who say, well, this is a good thing.
Well, they idealize it. They said, we'll have more control. The society will be organized. There'll be rules and everyone will follow them. What they don't understand is that once those rules are put into place, the people who are in the authority like to change the rules so that it squeaks more. And if there's a problem, it's going to be you that has to solve the problem. If there's someone who has to adjust their life, it's going to have to be you. If there's someone that's going to be unhappy about the way things are going, it's not going to be them. It's going to be you who's going to be unhappy. And you're going to be in a weakened position where there'll be nothing you can do about it, short of revolution.
Yeah, it's sad people don't learn from history. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest lesson I always take from.
And what happens if they don't learn? I always ask you this question. You don't learn from history, what happens?
You're doomed to repeat it.
Doomed. That's the word. You are doomed to repeat it. And that's what they're doing now.
But why do we always learn from bad history and don't learn from good history?
About how wonderful that piece of time of peace and prosperity. Remember how wonderful that was? How did we do that? Well, we weren't at war. Well, we can't outlaw war. I mean, we love war. War's easy. It's something we do naturally. What else can we do? Good agriculture production, industry producing at home, not reliant on imports. Well, we can't do that. What else? People are happy in their jobs, and there's a market for the future. No, can't do that. What else? Right now, we're in a position where no matter what the solution is, there's a guy named Joe Manchin or someone else who's going to say, no. I know what you're thinking. I know what you have in mind. My answer is no.
It's a shame. And again, as I tell my, as I talk with different friends and we talk about the state of the world, which unfortunately I will tell you, I like to do less and less. I used to really like to talk about the state of the world.
It ain't much to write about now.
Yeah. And I just more and more just feel like, there's nothing we can do about it. And I'm sure there is. I'm hoping that, my daughter's generation and the people who come after her are going to look at this for what it is. I always thought that racism and apartheid and all of this was going to end with my daughter's generation, because I thought, they much, much more than we ever saw marry interracially. You see, they're not as, as violent as our generation was. But yet,
then there's always a Rittenhouse in there somewhere.
Yeah, but yet you see the deification of murderers and the deification of people of bad people, of evildoers, as to quote George W., to the deification of people who can do you harm more than do you good, and the slander of progressive ideals
as a weakness, is somehow a step backwards.
You're not a man. You're not a man. You're not a man if you're a liberal. You're not a man if you want to see progress. You're a man if you want to sit on the bed of your pickup truck, on the tailgate of your pickup truck, and swill down beers. And that's why I got to grab a pickup truck.
Well, I don't know what we're going to do about that, because stupidity, ignorance, and unrest are now the bywords of about 40% of the American people. They want chaos. They want a dictator. They want what the rest of America cannot abide by. Now, we're so lucky to live on the West Coast, because even if the worst happens in the midterm elections, and even if the worst happens in 2024, no matter what they decide that life is going to be like in Washington, we know that life in California is going to continue to be as we want it to be. Where, by the way, we set an 85-year-old record for rain in downtown LA yesterday. So things are changing everywhere, and the weather and the storms that come from the weather, like we see in Colorado, have become a feature that the federal government tries to respond to. But now, what does Washington or anybody? What has any of the climate deniers said about the firestorms in Colorado? And the 110-mile-an-hour winds that preceded it, 110 mile an hour. They had a hurricane in the middle of the state that came up out of nowhere, burned that fire through 500 homes before those people had less than 30 minutes notice. Some of them had no notice whatsoever. I'm sure they'll find that that's the case.
Yeah, I don't know if it's, it's funny. I was looking the other day at something about the tornadoes in the Midwest.
Right.
And then as I researched it, I looked back and I found a couple of stories. There have been tornadoes in the Midwest in December. It's not as uncommon as you think it would be, but the veracity, the speed, the violent nature of these tornadoes are bigger.
And that one went 200 miles without lifting off.
Yeah. So while you can say, well, there's been tornadoes in central, in the middle of America in 1958, 1980, and whatever, it's still bigger, badder, and more violent tornadoes than we've seen before. So you have to figure out what's causing that.
And unpredictable.
Yeah. With all the technology we have, we can't predict those.
And you don't think the people in Colorado are going to say, well, every December we have 110-mile-an-hour winds and a city gets burned down. That always happens around here.
Yeah. Now, it's funny. I was watching the mayor of one of the towns on
Louisville.
No, it wasn't Louisville. It was one of the other towns. And he was saying, well, we have a volatile mix here. We've built houses out in forests, in lands that really, or formerly open spaces.
Right.
And that's something that I think people have to think about. You have several places where you're building houses. Now, the idea this is going to go away, but in California, they're building houses. Nobody knows where they're going to get the water for them.
Yeah.
Now you'll have more water now with this storm that's coming, but it's not.
So we'll build more houses. Now we can build more houses.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Now all of a sudden you're going to get the and it's nothing but the politicians taking money.
Sure.
They get they want to get property taxes. They want to get their payoffs. They want to get it's again we alluded to it.
Oh God.
That as long as the politicians get theirs, and that's what we have to do, Michael. We have to get away from the idea that it's all only about us and what we have, and much more about what we've been given by God, which is, or whoever you want to believe, which is this beautiful planet to live, and we're screwing it up. We're screwing it up, man.
One of the aspects of our existence on the planet is that we deny, almost to the point where we deny that we're here. We have according to the humans have no effect on the planet. Humans have no effect on the animals, have no effect on the sea, have no effect on the land that they build on. We're neutral. We're the most wonderful thing that God ever came up with. We don't cause problems. We're friendly. We're always wonderful to be with. You can come over to the house anytime. You can cross the border. You can be Russian. You can be Ukrainian. We don't care. We're the most wonderful feature of this beautiful blue planet. When in fact, we are the single most evil aspect of that planet. And we can't seem to shake it. We can't seem to shake the ability to do the wrong thing at the right time.
Yeah. Well, we were given this great gift of thumbs, and brains.
Thumbs were good.
Thumbs are good. Thumbs help you. Could you imagine life without thumbs? It'd be kind of tough. We'd figure it out, but it'd be kind of tough until somebody invented a thumb.
Elon Musk would invent the Tesla thumb.
Right. You have the Tesla thumb and hook onto your thing, and it would be controlled by your mind. But we were given these things, or we developed these things so that we could survive better, so that we could be more than just an ape, more than just something that gets up in the morning, eats, craps, and then goes to sleep again.
That's about it.
A formation of cells.
That's about it, though, when you think of it. Even Tesla has to do that.
Yeah, well, we all have to. Yeah, everybody has to, everybody has to go to the loo. But just the idea that we, all of the stuff that we've been doing, and I think about this. I was looking at the tornado last night. I'm looking at all these cars that are damaged by the tornado. I'm saying, where is all of this stuff going?
Right to the junk pile.
But where's the junk pile going? Where's all the stuff for the junk pile going? I mean, the chemicals that are in these cars now, the mercury and all the different stuff they have to use to make these cars now. Where is it all going when the cars are done? Are they recycling it? Do they take it out? Do they reuse it? Can you take these chips out, which are made with selenium and stuff like that, and reuse them? I mean, where are we going here?
Well, you remember when you used to be able to take your stereo to a repair shop? But there are no repair shops anymore, because by the time you took your stereo to the repair shop, it would cost you more to fix it than it would to buy a new one.
Right.
And that's that right there is the American way. You want to fix it? It costs you more than to get a new one. Oh, I'll get a new one. What do you do with the old one? Nobody cares what you do with the old one. It doesn't work, right? Just set it over there. Forget about it.
Yeah, leave it by the side of the road.
Let's get you into a new amp and a new changer.
Although I have to admit that if you go on eBay and you look at the prices of vintage stereo equipment,
held on
to that thing that you threw in the dumpster behind the food fair.
Oh, my
when
marriage.
you were 18 years old.
Yep. You're damn right.
You are definitely gonna look at that and go, "Whoa!" I mean, I had I was looking on eBay for vintage stuff, and I have an old Sanyo
Oh,
receipt.
God.
And I mean, that thing, it's $400. I think I paid, $59.95 for it at Crazy Eddie's.
Madman Months.
His prices were insane.
Well, Madman Months would dress up like Napoleon, with the hat and his hand in his vest, and my prices are crazy. Madman Months. I'm insane. Come by a turntable. And you remember Top of the Hill Daily City, blowing it out to the bare walls.
Matthews
Stereo.
Matthews Daily City.
Top of the Hill Daily City.
And then who was the one? Putnam Buick. Bring your wife, your trade-in, and your checkbook.
Yeah, bring them.
Bring them all down.
Bring them down here, I tell you. Bring somebody else's wife, somebody else's checkbook, and a trade-in, and we don't care.
Yeah, but of course, we're talking about Bay Area hucksters, TV commercial guys. Nobody beat. Well, it was two that I used to love when I first got to San Francisco. Paul from the Diamond Center.
Oh God, I hated him.
Who was just, he was just outrageous. He was so sleazy.
He was so smarmy.
Yeah, I mean, he was so smarmy that you would never go there to buy a diamond, but his commercials were hilarious. I mean, he was just, and there was a guy on for a while when I first got to San Francisco. This was in 81, and his name was Jasper Brown. And Jasper Brown had a barbecue place on Divisadero.
Wow.
And I remember his theme song. It was Jasper Brown. He's a friend of mine. He can cook me barbecue any old time.
Do you remember the guy who sold cars and he would say that he was hacking and a hewing at the price? I'm just a hacking and a hewing at the price. $5,000? No way. I'll hack and hew at that price. And it's $5,600. How about that? I say I gave $600 more.
Yeah. I mean, hacking doesn't mean going down. Hacking can be hacking up.
I'm hacking them up and I'm hewing up too.
Yeah, there used to be some great, there was, as there were in every town. I mean, it's funny, Pittsburgh still has a bunch of those type of pitchmen. You got pitch people. You got Edgar Snyder, who's an personal injury lawyer. And he's on 24/7 on every station.
Because people in Pittsburgh keep getting in wrecks on the bridges.
And Edgar Snyder, has got a phenomenal business doing that. Nice guy, but again,
yeah,
there's a big sleaze factor there.
There was a sleaze factor too to a group of musicians out of New York in the 70s called the New York Dolls. You remember them?
Yeah.
Their idea was to be sleazy. And one of
the see them at the Coventry on Queens Boulevard when they first started. They were the house act.
And one of the names on my list of musicians who passed on this year was Sylvain, their lead guitarist.
Sylvain, yes. The New York Dolls were punk before there was really punk. I mean,
they were punk and camp and tramps and everything else you can think of.
Yep. They used to play at this club, Coventry, on Queens Boulevard and 58th, Queens Boulevard and 48th Street. And it was, the place, I believe, was an old Rambler dealer.
Oh, that's perfect. Hacking and hewing.
Yeah. And they changed it into a nightclub, and they were the house act for a couple of years before they moved into Manhattan and really got, really caught fire, got famous. And it was something you had to see because it was, it was a little bit of everything. It was glam rock, it was punk, it was everything anti-disco.
Right.
Disco was sweeping the city, and the New York Dolls were, the incredible anti-disco. So if you didn't want to go to a disco, you went to the Coventry, which was a big radio advertiser at the time, and you saw the New York Dolls and several other groups, Kiss, and they catered to that glam rock crowd.
Central Michigan just scored again, by the way.
I can't even look.
And they got the 2 points afterwards. So it's 21. Yes, 21 to nothing. Sorry, Sylvain. I'm sorry you had to.
Sorry you had to hear that.
I'm sorry you had to hear that. There was another guy who died this year that was a big part of our childhood, especially when the British Revolution came along, and that was Jerry Marsden of Jerry and the Pacemakers.
Yeah.
He had a number of great hits, and he was produced by George Martin and managed by Brian Epstein.
One of the, there were, the Beatles took obviously, 95% of the publicity, but there were other groups that were so good back in those days. Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Dave Clark Five, Freddie and the Dreamers,
the Animals, and Hilton Valentine, their lead guitarist, died this year.
Yeah, and there were so many of those bands.
The Yardbirds,
Unit 4+2.
Ho, dun dun dun, you for me.
The sidewalks in the street, the concrete and the clay beneath my feet will never tumble.
Maybe
my
we should.
Will never die.
That would be a good song for us to sing at halftime next time there's a game and they want entertainment.
If this game keeps going here, we should go over to the Coug Bar in Magnolia and start singing. But they can't be. I try to imagine, man, that there's people over there get an early start on New Year's Eve.
I'm sure it would be a welcome change to what they're going through. But when you coug it this bad and you get all your couging out in the first quarter in the first half, there's always the second half. Maybe they can come back.
Although this isn't a classic coug it. I mean, to classically coug it, they would have to be up by 21,
up by 48.
Yeah, and then lose it.
Yeah,
like the Seahawks did last week. I mean, that was your prototypical coug it. If you haven't scored a point here, you're not couging it.
You're right, Vinny. Classic couging is snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Exactly. Just when you think you got it, you ain't got it.
Slowly, I turned around.
Right. Step by step. There's a great video, by the way, of the Unit 4+2 doing concrete and clay. Probably 1964, 65, something like that, when the song was popular, at a construction site that appears to be in the middle of London.
Whoa.
And it's great because they got the construction workers and they're like, set up on a slab that looks like it was something that was knocked down, but it's still like the last piece. They're doing concrete and clay on concrete and clay.
There you go.
It's a great, whoever thought about it to do it. The Seekers, I think, were from Australia, weren't they?
Yes, they were.
Yes, but the Seekers, were part of that whole British, I guess, Australia was included anywhere else because the Bee Gees came along.
AC/DC came along.
AC/DC.
And Friday on My Mind, the Easy Bees were from Australia.
Yes. Davy Allen and the Arrows, right?
Yep.
Were they Australian?
Possibly.
Peter Allen.
Yes. And also the band that did Walking in the Rain. They did like rap narrations. Walking in the rain. And then he was the older brother of a member of AC/DC. I remember playing that at the City.
Yeah, it's Jerry Marsden was.
He had a great voice.
Yeah.
He was most famous for singing "You'll Never Walk Alone," which was the song they sing at Liverpool football games.
Right.
And it was his version that ruled the roost.
Yeah, I always loved "Ferry Cross the Mersey." I mean,
of course, great ballad.
Yeah, just I mean, you cry every time you hear it.
And it was part of that mystery of what the hell is Liverpool all about? Why is Liverpool so special? Why are all these great groups coming out of Liverpool?
Right.
And that was part of the answer. It was a city, a coastal port city, not unlike New York or San Francisco.
Yeah, it just had a great Great vibe. I mean, for every 3 or 4 or 5 groups that made it, there was, another 100 that didn't.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny. I listen to, every once in a while, I listen to Herman, Peter Noon from Herman's Hermits,
yeah,
which is another huge British group, and on satellite radio on the 60s channel. He does a show and he talks about it. He really gets into, some of these bands that you might not have really heard about, and, tell stories about that time. And it's actually, it's actually quite fascinating to listen to because he was there for all of it.
And to think how much music came out of that little country, continues to come out of England.
Yeah.
Setting records, breaking norms, starting new parts of the musical rainbow.
And I always liked the exchange. I mean, that the kids in the late 50s listened to, were listening to Chuck Berry, and they were listening to Buddy Holly, and they were listening to American rock and roll.
The Everly Brothers.
The Everly Brothers.
And by the way, Don Everly died this year at the age of 84.
Yeah.
McCartney talked about it. He said, I was Phil Everly and John was Don Everly, as to our way of thinking.
I heard yesterday, it's funny. I thought of the Everly Brothers yesterday, and I didn't see McCartney say that, but I heard Here, There, and Everywhere. And I started thinking, this is like this must have come from listening to the Everly Brothers.
Well, have you seen Get Back? Have you seen the movie?
Half of it. I haven't seen. Matter of fact, I might watch the other half tonight.
The interesting thing about it to me is how instantly and instantaneously and effortlessly Paul and John would sing in harmony, whether they were fooling around or whether they were singing one of their songs. It was instant. They knew what parts they had. It was already in their head.
It was almost like telepathic. It was on another level.
And Ringo was there, and George was there, and I was nothing to take away from their performance or their history with the group. But Lennon and McCartney were if they were in the room together, they alone were on another planet, and music just bubbled out of them on a constant flow. It never stopped. It never, ever stopped. Even when they were finished with a song, they would play another song, fooling around. They'd be playing rock and roll music or something, or jambalaya, because it just came out always, whether they were willing it or just sitting there and being the vessel for it. The music never stopped flowing from those two guys.
Yeah. It really is amazing to get that look at it. And also, I mean, there are other acts that had something like that, but nothing on the level of what the beat, and nothing on the level of two guys composing and then singing it.
Everything.
Yeah, a lot of people could write songs, a lot of people that could sing songs.
Right.
But you never hear a hit by George Gershwin that he sung.
Well, you don't even hear him play the piano very often.
Right. You never hear a hit from George from Cohen. You don't hear these people. They write songs and they give them to other people.
Right.
Even Jimmy Webb, if you want to go more.
Good example. Imagine his career without Glenn Campbell, for instance.
Yeah. I mean, he sat down and wrote the songs, but knew he didn't have the ability to sell that song on the level it needed to be sold.
No.
And I mean, to sing it at a level that would sell a song. Lennon and McCartney didn't know that.
No, they didn't even care.
Write the song and then just step out and sing the song.
Yep.
Both to a higher level than anybody had seen before.
It was really several magic moments in that movie were all just flow of the music, the accidental happenstance, the harmonies, the change in the routine, the change in the lyrics, whatever the case may be. In fact, we always thought they spent so much time on their lyrics. They made up their lyrics. In fact, the lyrics to Get Back changed 2 or 3 different times.
Yeah, they'd plug something in. Sweet Loretta Cornhole thought she was a hooker, until they got what they wanted,
exactly.
what it was supposed to be.
And even then they didn't write it down. Mal Evans had to write down the lyrics.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was really, it's amazing. We were talking about that singer-songwriters. The only, I'm trying to think, of somebody else that was before the Beatles. And, Neil Sedaka comes to mind.
Carole King and Jerry Goffin.
Well, but Carole King didn't sing her hits early on.
No,
she decided, it took her
right.
till 1970.
They gave the songs to Little Eva.
Yeah, they gave the songs to anybody that was in the building.
Right.
And for for him not to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a travesty. For Neil Sedaka to not be.
So many songs.
So many songs, so many great songs, so many songs that he wrote that were hits, but wrote and sang as well.
Yes.
And he would have had another huge one if it not had been for him changing record companies in 1964. Because It Hurts to Be in Love, that was made popular by Gene Pitney,
yep,
was actually set for Sedaka. It was a Sedaka song.
They had similar voices. God, Gene Pitney had a great voice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, talk about a vocal performance on I'm Gonna Be Strong.
Yep.
When he hits that last, verse, when they say it's the end, I'll just hand you a line. I mean, he's just, you're sitting there you're holding on to the steering wheel while he's singing it,
Speaking of emotional deliveries of songs, Jim Steinman, who was half of the Meatloaf team.
Yeah.
Sometimes reluctantly, they didn't always get along, died this year. And the Bat Out of Hell creation was his.
Loved Jim Steinman. I had the Jim Steinman album that was supposed to be the second Meatloaf album.
And he sang it instead of Meatloaf. Yeah.
And what a great, and when Meatloaf and he made up eventually, some of the songs came out on Future, like Rock and Roll Dreams Come True.
Right.
And matter of fact, you know what? I remember this. Rock and Roll Dreams Come True was the first song I played when I got my first radio gig.
On
KUSF. Even though it was an alternative station, I said, I'm going to start with this because this is the truth.
Well,
and I put the record on the turntable and Rock and Roll Dream. Matter of fact, it wasn't even on the record. It was on a picture sleeve 45.
Woo.
It came with the record.
Wow, good idea.
Yeah, and that was the first song I ever played when I was a budding young DJ at KUS.
My first song at the city was Hound Dog.
Really?
And you got to start somewhere, right? And that's where it started for me and musically. And I remember Joe Rogelski walking in and going, "What are you doing?" Joe Rogelski was always the clamp on the format. I don't know why. He was a news guy, but he felt that, if he felt a certain pride with the format that Yates and Kate had put together, and which I broke immediately. And,
which is probably why he's still with them.
Yeah. Well, they're a good team.
One of the longest running radio marriages.
That's quite a team.
Yeah,
they've done a lot of news over the years together.
They've been together since 1985.
Probably before that. There was two other people on my list that I wanted to mention.
Okay.
List of musicians that passed, because the country rock group Poco was a big influence on me when they first came out. And Paul Cotton and Rusty Young, both members of the band, died this year. Rusty Young was the slide guitar player and pedal steel player and singer. Paul Cotton was the same. He came from a group from the Midwest called the Illinois Speed Press, which you may remember. And that's where he wrote the song called Bad Weather, which became a big hit for Poco years later when they re-recorded it and became one of their favorites. So to Rusty Young on guitar and Paul Cotton on guitar and vocals, we bid them a farewell to heaven in 2021 and thank them for all the great music they put together with Poco.
Yeah, I saw Poco at Giants Stadium.
Whoa.
They were part of, one of those day on the green type things, and I'll never forget it. I was like, I knew them,
right?
But I hadn't ever heard them live or anything. And I was just blown away by how good they were.
Well, the Richie Furay, coming from Buffalo Springfield, had quite a history. Yeah. And Jim Messina too.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, they had great bloodlines, and I knew the records, um, but I'd never seen them live. And they had I don't know if it was the way the stadium was set up or what, but there was just a sound that they sounded so different than anything else that was on the bill.
Yep.
And you could say, and I remember saying, man, I'd like to see these guys in a smaller, venue somewhere that you could go see them and kind of get into the music a little bit more than you can, a giant stadium with 65,000 other people. But they were strong in that performance. A lot of soft new groups, I guess you'd call them. A lot of more soft. I don't want to call them soft rock because that's wrong. Although they did have some hits in that kind of format, but it was mellow rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
That was their forte, and they did it as good, if not better, than anybody else.
There was a guy from the Bay Area named Herbie Herbert who died this year. Herbert was not a musician. Well, maybe he could play the piano. I don't know. But he was a manager, and he put together the career of Journey, which was one of the great financial success stories of rock and roll.
Still going today, man.
They had hits after hit after hit. They toured the world over and over again. And they were all Bay Area boys who did an extraordinary job in putting together stadium rock at the premier level.
And it always fascinated me with Journey, because when I got to the Bay Area, I couldn't believe how much people didn't like Journey.
It was they put it down because it was a commercial effort.
Yeah. I mean, it was really shocking. These guys are like, okay, they're good, man. I mean, again, Steve Perry can belt the song out.
Neil Schon could play.
Yeah, Sean could play it, and I'm looking around. I'm thinking, what is everybody? I mean, it was like a badge of. I mean, if you it's like if you heard a band you didn't like, you'd say they're worse than Journey. But yet, they would sell out all their concerts, and they would they would perform, and they were. I thought, I wouldn't put them as one of my favorite bands, but I don't know, man. When Steve Perry cranks out Lights, you stop what you're doing, don't you?
And Don't Stop Believing became the theme for the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah, and and for 9 million other.
Right.
I remember when the first World Series for the Giants. I can't remember what year it is now. Was it 2010?
Yes, 2010, 2012, 2014.
2010. Because I just moved to Pittsburgh. That was my first year in Pittsburgh. And I think the Giants, the Pirates weren't in it that year. There was some guy who on YouTube did his own Giants version of Don't Stop Believing. It had like 2 million clicks on it. I mean, and this was, in 2010.
Right.
But he was a fan, and he had, the karaoke track. He did a really good job of doing it. A really good job of with the song and everything. Go find it on YouTube. It'll bring back some great memories for you.
Great. Let's see, who am I going to mention before I run out of time? Oh, Graham Edge, the drummer for the Moody Blues. They had a big effect on us during their time. Michael Nesmith of the Monkees. B.J. Thomas, Raindrops Keep Falling on Your Head.
Yes. And The Eyes of a New York Woman.
Oh, yeah. Chick Corea. Oh, Bunny Wailer from the Wailers.
Yeah.
And
Chick Corea in return.
And the New York, a kid from Long Island named Tim Bogart, one of the great bass players of all time, who was in Vanilla Fudge, Cactus, and Bogart, Beck, and Apiche.
I was trying to think of, I knew he was in like Southern Hillman Fury, in a band with 3 names.
Right.
I know it's Beck, Bogart, and Apiche.
I always call him Apiche. I don't know. Who else is on my list? I guess that's all the major ones. Well, we did mention Charlie Watson, Don Everly.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a story that has nothing to do with rock and roll. A guy bought a used 2013 Tesla, and he spent $22,000 trying to get it right. So finally, he took it to he was in Scandinavia somewhere, He took it to a group of YouTube people who blow things up on YouTube. And they took his Tesla and loaded it with dynamite and shot it with 20 different cameras and blew it to bits. And he decided that was the best way to celebrate his end with his experiment with Tesla. After repairing it, he had the ultimate Tesla lemon, and he blew it to bits.
Wow. Did I used to have that much money?
Well, yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you buy the Tesla, that's got to be, 30 grand there.
What's used? A used Tesla, 30 grand?
Tesla, 20 grand. And then you stick 20 into it, and then you blow it up.
And after all that, you still don't have a car.
And still you're back in the Volkswagen Golf that you started with.
and it won't start.
And it won't start. It's one of those diesels that I don't know what they did with all those cars.
Probably there's one guy on my list. You remember a guy named Jimmy Rogers with Honeycomb and I'm Falling in Love Again. Yep, he died this year.
Honeycomb, must be my baby.
Unfortunately, he was on Roulette Records, so he never got a dime.
Oh yeah, the Roulette Records story. Did Selvin write a book about that? Joel Selvin write a book about Roulette Records?
He wrote about Bang Records.
Bang Records. Or was it Burt Burns?
Yes.
Yeah, Burt Burns. And how many?
Bang stood for Burt, Nesui, Ahmed, and Jerry, the guys who did Atlantic Records.
Yeah.
Ahmed Erdogan, Nesui Erdogan, Jerry Wexler, and Burt Burns. That's the Bang.
Great. I love talking about this stuff, Michael. It just brings back so many memories and so many, concert stubs that are sitting in a box somewhere, and backstage passes and everything like that of how many shows have we gone to in our collective lives.
Not enough. We need to go to more.
We need to go to more. We need more music. That's part of what's wrong with us, I think, right now, is we're not putting music. We have a whole generation of people who haven't been taught that that music is great. And that's why I applaud, we got our love of music from listening to the radio, but also from school.
Yep.
You went to school, you had a music class, whether it was music appreciation, whether it was that you learned how to play an instrument. And you don't get that in school, a lot of schools anymore. And that's why I applaud guys like Miami Steve Van Zandt.
Oh, God, yeah.
And other people who have started these foundations. And Van Zandt's is good because little Steven not only throws money at it, but he lays out a curriculum.
Right.
A teacher, and I've actually attended one of the teacher sessions where you can, where if you're a teacher, you can go and you can plug into their website and download a whole curriculum to teach your class about music and music history and how it relates to American history. And how, We Shall Overcome and Blowing in the Wind motivated a generation of people to stand up and demand justice.
Right.
And end the war.
Music was part of all of that. It was part of the foundation of all that movement.
Yeah. And that is why, and radio. Radio, because radio back in those days, especially FM radio, was the social media. That's what, we were talking early in the show about, people these days and those days. Yeah, we didn't have social media that we could plug into, but we had radio. And if you were smart enough and hip enough and knew, or somebody told you enough to tune into a WBAI or a KPFA, or even in the early days, a WNEW or a KSAN, you heard what was going on.
And also, in all those major cities, there was an underground press, too.
Right. There was an East Village Other. There was a Village Voice. There was
Ramparts.
Ramparts. There were all these. So we had it. It just wasn't at our fingertips. We had to seek it out. Yeah, you had to look for it. It wasn't in your face like it was, but it was there. And you had coffee houses.
And you had other people who would turn you on to stuff, who would discover something and let you know.
Right, because there was so much of more of a friendlier time, where people weren't afraid to approach each other. You go to a coffee shop now, nobody looks. They don't even look at each other in the eye.
No.
Everybody's just looking down at their computers or their phones or whatever, and nobody's talking to each other unless you go in there with somebody else. And that's sad, because that's where those places, those coffee houses, those newspapers, those particular places were where the free speech movement was born, where the anti-war movement that stopped the war,
and the environmental movement,
the slaughter of young men in Vietnam for no reason, and many other social issues of the day.
Yep.
So maybe we got to get back. Maybe part of the whole solution to it, Michael, is that we get back to music in schools and teaching people that there's a direct correlation between music and peace and love.
And the society that produces music can always be judged favorably or unfavorably based on what kind of music they're putting out. And right now in America, there is a wider breadth of music being produced and recorded than ever before. But you will not find it reflected in modern radio, because the people in radio can't do it. It's not that they won't anymore. They bred themselves a series of executives and program directors and music directors that cannot do it correctly. They mess it up as by a rule of thumb. They simply cannot do it.
Well, because when you went into a radio station in the 70s or the 80s, Michael, it was a collection of people that were interesting, that were oddballs,
creative.
The salespeople,
right?
The salespeople would come in the studio and hang out and talk to the DJs and find out what the new records were. The program directors handed out records to the salespeople so they know the product and stuff like that. You had that cohesiveness in a radio station. Most of the people, I wouldn't say all of them, but many people were stoned. There was usually one executive guy. Right. There was usually one guy who had, control of not control, but he was responsible for everything to whatever corporation or family or whatever owned that radio station. And then in the 80s, with deregulation, it just turned into a business. Now you walk into a radio station and it's like you could be walking into an insurance company. You could be walking into a high-tech company, a computer company. There's no soul in it anymore.
In fact, you find more soul in a Subway sandwich place than you will in a radio station, because they at least have to answer to the needs of their customers.
Yeah. And radio, now they're grabbing onto podcasts. And say, oh, well, digital media is what it is, but yet they're not seeking out and putting on personalities.
No,
people that relate to people that can make it more interesting, and the spoken word is there, man. But now people have gone over to podcasts, and maybe that's, you don't need a 3-hour show. Have 12 one-hour shows.
Right.
With different ideas and personalities.
And
I'd rather hear an hour of, Jay Leno, let's just say. Let's just use Jay Leno, for example. An hour of Jay Leno talking about cars and playing some music, or a guy like that, or a guy who can tell me about the history of the music. And that's where Little Steven's Underground Garage does its job so well.
Sometimes he'll do a whole show about producers.
Yeah. They explain it. They tell stories about who produced it, who did this, who did that. The stuff that the radio barons has said that people don't want to hear.
Anytime you've got an executive who can tell you what the people want to hear, just look at his ratings. Let's find out how much you know about what you just said. You're 20th in a market of 73 stations. So it doesn't look like you know anything. Doesn't it looks like you're about halfway up the of where you would normally be if you broadcast a tone during the day.
Yeah.
Your ratings speak to you not being able to, if you were that rate, if you had that rating and you made automobiles, you'd be out.
Right.
If you had that rating,
if you
had that rating and you were making sandwiches, you'd be out. So what you think you know about the needs and the wants of the public seems to be somewhat short of what you think you know.
Yeah. Well, Mikey, let's hope that 2022 brings a lot of change and good change.
Mikey and Vinnie return to Seattle radio, 10 to noon on a station near you.
Let's hope so. Let's hope somebody has the sense enough to hire us or put us to work, because it's funny, we do it. Listen, we do this for the love of doing it. I mean, we don't get paid to do this.
But we have to do it. Admit it.
Yeah. I mean, this is our therapy session. If we didn't do this 3 times a week, and that's really, it's kind of how this started. And,
Yep.
In 2020, when the pandemic was raging, we said, let's do something to entertain
the stay-at-homes,
people who there's nothing for them. They're sick of watching TV. They're futzing around on their computer. We said, let's go on every couple of days and just rapid flat. And I got to tell you, Michael, it's been number one, cheaper than therapy for me.
Yeah.
And informative. And I think that we have developed into what we were back in the 90s in Seattle radio, which is,
in fact, I think we're better.
Yeah, yes, you're right. Because we don't just talk about sports. Right. We talk about everything. And it's my pledge to 2022 that I don't do resolutions. There's 2 things that I'm going to do in 2022. Number one, we're going to develop this into a podcast, and we're going to get a Patreon, and we're going to allow people to contribute, to listen to this and try to get it a little bigger than it is. And hopefully we'll get picked up on some terrestrial radio, or we're not opposed to doing radio. And the other thing is, satellite radio, if they want us on one of their stations.
Absolutely.
And the second thing is, in 2022, as I am 66 years old, I am going to drive Route 66 at some point this year from one end to the other.
And don't forget, you got to go to Pittsburgh and pick up your stuff. Maybe I'll go with you.
Yeah. I got to do that too. But I'm going to make that trip in sometime, I think, in the spring, and I'll have more details on it as it comes, as it comes together. But with a little bit of luck, you'll all be able to participate in it and raise some money for Parkinson's disease.
What do you think you'll be driving?
I am requesting a Corvette from Chevrolet.
Woo-hoo.
So it can be the, kind of like the old Route 66 in, the old TV show with Martin Milner and George Maharis, wasn't it?
And Biff Jiggerman.
And Biff Jiggerman. He was in the backseat of the Corvette.
Yeah, and Biff Jiggerman as Louis.
That's almost one of my favorite parts of Galaxy Quest. Have you ever seen Galaxy Quest?
No.
The movie? Oh, Michael, You got to watch it. It's such a great movie.
I only watch films about espionage or murders.
Watch. Well, this is espionage. Watch Galaxy Quest. There's a part in the movie where they Sam Rockwell plays this character who was an unnamed character on the show, and in the end credits, they put him on as Guy Fliegelman. And you just feel so good for the guy because he got into the credits because he was for the whole movie, the unnamed character.
Yeah.
And now he's Guy Fliegelman.
I'll always remember Guy Fliegelman.
He was a good man, Guy. Unfortunately, he was killed in a tragic helicopter accident. He was the guy that was in the helicopter with Vic Morrow.
Oh, God. That was over in a hurry.
Many people remember that, but
I remember that.
Filming The Twilight Zone.
Yep.
Was that John Landis, I believe?
Yes, it was. Director John Landis.
Yeah, John Landis. And All right, my friend. What you want to make a commitment for 2022 here before we sign off?
Harder, faster, stronger.
I like that. You know, you make that commitment like every year, though.
I'm still waiting.
So okay. So I was going to ask you, has anything changed?
Yes, I'm not as hard. I'm slower, and I'm not as strong as I was. So
Well,
I need to work out.
so the dream lives on. Well, yeah. You know what? That's something that we got to do in the new year. Is we got to set some workout goals. Maybe we'll have
Jan Shelby,
Jan Shelby on to smack us into shape. I've been working with her a little bit.
trainer to the stars.
Because I got to tell you, man, if I'm going to slide into that Corvette,
Yeah,
go across country, if that happens, if the Corvette happens, I'm going to have to be a whole lot skinnier to get into that thing.
no, maybe you should get a Bentley instead.
Well, I can get into the Corvette.
It's a long drive, 66.
Yeah. I can't wait to do it, man. I can't. It's something I've always pledged I was going to do my entire life.
Well, you'll be driving through Pasadena because Colorado Boulevard is Route 66.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Listen, well, I fully expect to sleep on your living room floor.
And by the way, the hordes are here from Ohio State and from Utah. The hordes, the sickly, violent, unthinking, unwashed hordes have come to Pasadena as they do once a year. But this year, God knows what it's going to be like. It could be gooey out there in Colorado Boulevard. We're going to cruise Colorado Boulevard this afternoon as the people are already in place.
Do it in your car. Wear your mask.
Yep. Oh yeah. Don't you worry. And don't shake anybody's hand.
Yeah. Don't shake anybody's hand.
We're from Ohio.
Go back.
You stay over there.
Yeah. Go back. Thank you. Until you get. I don't even know what the vaccination numbers are in Ohio, but I'm thinking.
I don't think they're earth-shattering.
I don't think so. I think maybe in Cleveland and Columbus they might be, but other than that, of course, those are a bit more liberal cities.
Well, the Ohio State University players and fans are here as they are from Utah. So let's hope it's a good game.
Say that the Ohio State.
I don't know why, but that's the way it is. The Ohio State.
Well, see if you see Urban Meyer walking around anywhere.
And the Cougs, by the way, are down 21-0. Halftime is over. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs, man. It's time for the comeback. It is time for the comeback.
Final score 28-21 Cougs. What do you say?
God, would I love that. I don't even know how to get Jack Thompson to be that optimistic. So I'll go 24-21 Cougs.
I accept that.
I accept that and I endorse it. Mikey, it
was a good year.
It was a good year. Happy New Year, Mikey. It's
Happy New Year, man.
Our friendship and our work that we do is so meaningful to me. I couldn't really put it into words.
Nope. We're a team. That's all there is to it. A natural team.
There you go. We're not to paraphrase Michael Nesmith, we're not the only cuddly toys to be enjoyed by any boy.
He alluded to Michael Nesmith.
I alluded. Excuse me. I have to go allude now. Mikey, see you next year on Monday morning.
That's the way it's going to be.
That's the way it's going to be. If the Lord's willing, the creek don't rise.
You bring the Manischewins. Yeah.
Be safe. Don't, I know it's tempting to go places, but be safe, be smart, and be here on Monday at 10, a little after 10 o'clock, where we get together, Mikey and Vinnie, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Until then, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I got to do it this way, Pete, because people that watch in England get mad at me when I do that. Peace, love, and Manischewitz.
What a wine. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Good night, Sammy Davis, wherever you are.